I'm Steve and welcome to my kitchen. Today I want to demonstrate how you can make bakery quality cinnamon raisin bread.
Like this, with only a few minutes of work. I want you to discard all your thoughts about how much work it is to make bread. This cinnamon raisin bread does not require any kneading.
I have set up my workspace with my utensils and my ingredients.
I'll be using 3 cups flour, 1½ teaspoons salt, 1 teaspoon instant yeast, 2 tablespoons ground cinnamon, 2 tablespoons brown sugar, 1 cup raisins, and 14½ ounces of water. I'm going to start with the dry ingredients. 3 cups flour. I use the scoop and shake method for measuring flour. This recipe is very forgiving and you don't have to be exact. Next, 1½ teaspoons salt. I use everyday table salt. There are a number of no-knead recipes in which the salt varies from 1 to 2 teaspoons, depending upon your diet. I use a heaping teaspoon to get my teaspoon and a half. And 1 teaspoon instant yeast. Two tablespoons ground cinnamon, 2 tablespoons brown sugar. Before we add the raisins, I want to mix the dry ingredients to ensure they are evenly distributed throughout the flour. Now the raisins. Once again, I'll mix the dry ingredients. Make sure your raisins are fresh and moist. If not, you may want to soak them in hot tap water for half an hour. Now it's time for the wet ingredients. 14½ ounces cool tap water. Next, we'll combine the wet and dry ingredients. Note how the dough is beginning to stick to the bowl. It means the ingredients are blended.
Did you see how easy that was? No mixer, no kneading. All I had to do was combine the wet and dry ingredients and I'll be eating fresh from the oven cinnamon raisin bread in the morning. All I need to do now is cover the bowl with plastic wrap, leave it on the counter to proof overnight, and Mother Nature will do the kneading for us. I'll see you in the morning.
Typically, no-knead dough is proof for 8 to 18 hours, but cinnamon raisin bread has a heavier dough and should be proof for 12 to 18 hours. So I make the dough in the evening, proof overnight, bake the next morning, and I have fresh from the oven bread for brunch.
Good morning. The dough is proofed overnight and more than doubled in size. It's time to fold, shape, and proof the dough a second time.
I use skillets as proofing baskets. The skillet will pre-shape the dough, and it's an excellent vehicle for transporting the dough to the baking vessel. So I'll start by spraying the skillet with no-stick baking spray. Next, I'll dust the workspace with flour and scrape the dough out of the bowl. Its stringy nature tells us Mother Nature has done her job. I'm just going to pat the dough flat and fold. It's normal for this dough to be heavy. Cinnamon raisin bread shouldn't be as light and airy as a baguette. I'm turning the dough over onto itself and forming a ball. That's all you need to do. I placed the dough in the skillet and covered it with a flour sack towel to proof. Before I leave the kitchen, I'll prep the oven. I positioned the rack to the lower part of the oven and inserted the baking vessel. I do it in advance so I don't forget. I'm going to proof the dough for an hour and a half. I want to preheat the oven for half an hour, so I'm setting the timer for 1 hour. Dough should be proofed for 1 to 2 hours, and the oven should be preheated for 30 minutes. It's been 1 hour, and I'm setting the oven to 450 degrees, and I'll reset the timer for an additional 30 minutes. I know the oven will come to temperature before 30 minutes, but a Dutch oven is a heat store, and it needs to be at 450 degrees for 10 minutes to come to temperature.
The dough has been proofing for an hour and a half. The oven has been preheating for 30 minutes. It's time to bake the bread.
I'm using the Sassafras Superstone Baker as my baking vessel. No-Knead dough is too wet to shape. It is typically shaped by the baking vessel. This baker will give the loaf a nice shape and excellent crust, but you can use any baking vessel, like this casserole dish which I use to shape this cheddar cheese bread, or one of these Dutch ovens. I use a smaller Dutch oven to shape this beer bread, or this eggplant-shaped casserole dish which I use to shape this multigrain Roadhouse white. The point is, there are a variety of baking vessels you can use. There is no right or wrong. You're the baker. Do you want a round, oval, or long loaf? You decide. Okay, back to making bread. Now watch how easy it is to transfer the dough to the Superstone Baker when you use a skillet as a proofing basket. This is something your kids can do safely. Next, I'll score the dough. I couldn't do it when it was in the skillet because I inverted it when I transferred it to the baking vessel. My solution is to use the scissors. It's safe, it's easy, and it does an excellent job. And it's ready for the oven. Next, we'll set the timer for 30 minutes. I'll see you then. The bread should be baked for 30 minutes with the lid on the baking vessel. After baking for 30 minutes, no-knead bread is typically baked with the top off for an additional 15 to 30 minutes for appearance and to give a rustic crust. But you're the baker. Develop your own preferences. My wife and I prefer cinnamon raisin bread just as it is after 30 minutes.
It's been 30 minutes. The bread is ready. Let's take a look.
Well, what do you think? This is a real artisan bread that could sit on the shelf in any bakery. And take a look inside. I can't overexpress the pleasure of having fresh artisan bread around the house, and it is, almost, as easy as making a bowl of Campbell's soup.